Sony have just unveiled the One Mark III. I'm only going off the specs here because we don't have one in the studio yet, but this is really something. I want to take this video up to the next level. Let's cue the Japanese music and let's do this in style. I'm excited. Forgive the somewhat dramatic introduction there, but I'm really excited about this, and you're going to find out why. This is a really juicy looking improvement over the One Mark II. This is better than I'd hoped, and before I go any further, make sure you're subbed because we will get this phone in the studio here, and the 10 Mark III and the 5 Mark III. And check out the link below for Gravy Beats. I love a bit of Japanese, and I would recommend subbing to those guys. They're really cool, actually. Love the music. So without any further ado, as they say in Japan, minya arimasu. Let's kick things off with the display, or ROYCE. So all the good stuff that you would expect to still be in place is still in place. Obviously 21:9 HDR OLED, but here we go. Let's actually have a klaxon here. Thank you very much. Because this is another Sony world first, because this is the world's first ever smartphone with a 4K HDR OLED 120Hz refresh rate display. I mean, wow. So as I go through this video, I want you to keep a mental note of your kind of like 1 to 10 take my money scale, because opening with a world first like that, okay, we're getting right up the dusty end towards the 10 already, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, let's get through this. We've got some really nice stuff here. It's always good to see that creator mode is there, obviously powered by Cine Alta. This is going to give you what the director had in mind when filming, you know, Sony's professional monitors there. Here's another thing that I really like about this. Each and every Sony Xperia One Mark III is going to be calibrated individually to make sure that it is absolutely spot on. You know, some people say, why are Sony phones, you know, Xperia phones, quite pricey? Well, you know, they don't do things unless they do them properly, and this is a classic example of doing things meticulously and thoroughly. I mean, it's impressive. I think you'll agree. I just want to quickly do a comparison here with Rolls-Royce before we move on to the sound, obviously, because people love to say, well, you know, Xperia doesn't have a big market share. It doesn't. It's tiny, actually. A bit like Rolls-Royce. And I googled this. Apparently they sold 3,750 cars last year, but there were 3.4 million cars sold. That's only, my maths is terrible, 0.1 something % market share. I like to think Xperia phones has a slightly bigger market share, but you pay more for a Rolls-Royce, you get the exclusivity. You see where I'm going with this? Anyway, let's move on to the sound, or as they say in Japan, Otto. So of course we've got our front-facing stereo speakers here and the headphone jack, of course, as we had before on the Xperia One Mark II. What I want to point out here specifically, though, is that the structure here, the speaker structure on the left and right as you look at the screen, is actually a different design. So we're going to see not just richer bass, which is great news, less vibration in the chassis and the phone as a whole, but we're also going to have 40% louder volume, which is wonderful news as well. Again, this is all great stuff. Dolby Atmos sound in collaboration with Sony Pictures Entertainment, no less. It all sounds pretty good. And let's just quickly run through the checklist here. High-res audio, yes, and the wireless version as well, yes. LDAC, DSEE, Ultimate, 360 reality audios there as well. Tidal partnership remains in place, which is great to see. Klaxon world first alert. This is the world's first smartphone to give you 360 reality audio on its stereo speakers. Not just through headphones, but actually on the phone itself. That's cool, I like that. I can't wait to get this in the studio and try that out. Also, something called 360 spatial sound is going to come into play. If you're listening to channel stereo music, in real time, this technology will actually give it the full immersive 360 reality sound treatment and supposedly make it sound fantastic. Again, can't wait to try that here in the studio. Oh, did I mention that we sell these t-shirts? They're in the video description below or somewhere down there. You can buy one if you want. Game me? So I want to kick off with that 120 Hz refresh rate here, of course. That's the logical starting point. If you're a mobile gamer, being an Xperia owner here might give you a serious advantage. Here's why. Not only do we have this fantastic 120 Hz refresh rate display, but there are some visual audio tweaks here that you might find really interesting. Low gamma razor, for example, makes it easier to see in the darker areas of the screen where an enemy could be lurking and so on. You get to shoot them first, obviously, which is great. And it does that without overblowing the lighter areas there of the screen. You've also got the audio equalizer, which you can tweak with the treble there to make sure that you hear things like, for example, Sony says enemy footsteps and so on. Interesting, want to try that. And then, of course, you've got the ability to optimize the VC microphone, so you can reduce the background noise depending on the earphones you're using and so on. For better team communication, that's all pretty good. But of course, the main thing is that refresh rate. And on that note, 240 Hertz motion blur reduction, of course, which updates the image. I had to double check this. 240 times per second. If that doesn't turn out to be blur free, then I'd be pretty surprised. Camera Jujutsu. Can I have a klaxon, please? Because, thank you. This is another world first here from Sony. Specifically, the world's first smartphone with variable telephoto lens and dual PD sensor in one for rapid focus, even at long range. Well, let's get into this properly now, because this is really exciting. I'm just going to leave here on the screen now all the lenses, all four in all their glory, so you can just soak up these specs. I'm not going to read through them all, you don't need that. So obviously, the most exciting thing here is that variable telephoto lens. You can obviously choose between 70mm, 105mm there. We don't have the phone in the studio yet. We haven't had a chance to go out shooting with it yet. So right now, let's just focus on what Sony's told us, the most important things here. The autofocus game on this phone is strong, really strong. A bit like with the One Mark II, we've got that Alpha 9 series algorithm magic here being carried across, which is great news. It isn't going to be, in terms of the zoom here, a question of giving us the kind of zoom that we've seen on other manufacturers. Obviously, Samsung springs to mind. And Sony's rationale, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense and it's very Sony. Obviously, they can give you this incredible zoom, but we all know the more you go down that route, the lower the quality, of course, and Sony wants to preserve the quality at all costs. So if there's enough to get involved, and you can still do things like track objects far off. Again, the autofocus and tracking on this is going to be second to none, we expect. But you won't have that drop-off in quality that you would get with other manufacturers. That's what they're telling us, and we'll tell you when we get this in the studio. Make sure you're subbed. Did I mention that? I think so. So what are the takeaways here? Stronger low light performance, fast, accurate, continuous autofocus across all lenses, AI super resolution zoom. So that's Sony's AI processing for clearer zoom. I can't wait to test all of this stuff here. The other really exciting thing is over on the apps themselves, the camera app here. So this is really, really interesting. PSM here and auto. So that's all the fun stuff, all the alpha magic that we expect and love, and raw files and focus modes and all that kind of stuff. But we've also got here basic mode. Now, basic mode is made for convenience, of course, and for those that just want to get involved and get quick, easy, good results. Portrait orientated, touch shutter button there. There's that computational bokeh effect, the selfie mode, panorama. Interesting, and it's nice to see Sony opening up to this, because I know that with the One Mark II, it was all about professional photography and all the rest of it, and that's great. But I always felt, and actually the team here at Sony 365 felt, that this is every bit as much about an enthusiast getting into photography as it is about a pro. And I think with this approach, it appeals to a wider audience. Now, when it comes to filming video, I did want the stability to be improved there. It looks like, well, certainly in terms of these branding names here, optical steady shot with flawless eye, they're telling us it's going to be shake-free video. Well, I mean, any improvement there will be very, very well received, that's for sure. One more thing before we move on to the next chapter, and that is, obviously all the burst mode magic is there as before, but even in low light now, thanks to Bion's mobile tech stuff here, again, I don't just want to read out specs here, I want to move on to the next chapter. All of these things we're going to test out in our full review videos. But there's one thing I forgot to say. I don't know if you remember, but when I was reviewing the One Mark II, we did several 100,000 videos on that phone. The front-facing camera we discovered quite early on is rubbish, and I'm a little bit worried about what we're dealing with here on the One Mark III. It's still an 8-megapixel front-facing camera. I don't have any more details really than that at this stage, but that is in the kind of we need to keep an eye on that category. I think you'll agree. Hopefully it's obviously better, but time will tell. Performance. Battery. I want to start with a battery, 4,500 milliamp hours. This is good news. And of course, this is Sony we're talking about here. So they're shouting about the fact you've got 3 years long life there with the battery there in terms of full, proper life. 30 minutes to get to 50% charge. That's nice. What's also nice is that Sony have given us a charger in the box, a 30-watt charger no less. Again, this is looking particularly generous when we think about other manufacturers. What else have we got here? 5G. That's great. We expected that because, what else was it going to be? 12 gigs of RAM. That's with either 256 gigs or 512 gigs, depending on, what country you're in. We're going to come back to that theme a little bit later on. Qualcomm Snapdragon 888, of course. 25% faster CPU, 35% faster GPU. Jolly good. Here's another nice thing. Wireless charging and battery share. I have a feeling that the new WF-1000 XM4s are going to be making an appearance right there, being charged there by your One Mark III. I think that's what we're going to see. Nice to see that, isn't it? So before we move on to the design and conclusion, then water and dust resistance. Great to see that, of course, as ever. IP65 and 68, and Corning Gorilla Glass Victus. So that's great too. C'est que. Now look, a lot of tech reviewers wind me up by saying that the Xperia One Mark II look, they said it was sort of, I heard all sorts of derogatory things about it, like, it was kind of too old looking and so on, mainly because it doesn't have a punch hole camera, I think. I love the fact that it doesn't, I've said that before. This is a slightly more refined version of the One Mark II. Obviously we've got the bigger camera bump on the back. I love the fact that these two new colours here, black and purple, are both frosted. That's really cool because my goodness, the One Mark II is a fingerprint magnet. It's classy stuff. It really looks good. This, as I've said before, is very much the phone for those who don't have a point to prove. They're very comfortable and they don't need a flashy, blingy device to feel good about themselves. So yes, the bezels are a bit slimmer. In terms of the dimensions, it's almost identical. It's just a little bit of a trim here and there. It does look good. This is a very slick looking device. Anyone who says it isn't, I don't really get where they're coming from. Ketsuron. So I think you'll agree with me. This is shaping up really, really nicely for Xperia fans. But there is more good news and then a couple of things we need to keep an eye on here. In terms of the good news, the frosted colour, I love that. The massive improvements there with the camera tech on paper, because of course we're talking about specs here. The fact that the One Mark III, the 5 Mark III and the 10 Mark III are all being unveiled and launched at the same time. That's wonderful news. And by the way, the phones are going on sale early summer. I don't have an exact date, no one does yet. So what are the things we need to keep an eye on? The price. Nobody knows the price yet. We're going to know that in about 2 weeks' time, I believe. We'll see. We obviously need to keep an eye on that. That could change things. By the way, I'm just waiting for confirmation here from Sony because I'm not sure 100% what the deal is with the Google Assistant button. Is it definitely that? Can it be remapped? All that kind of stuff. But as soon as I know, I'll share that with you, of course, for, to be sure. I haven't heard anything about apps like the Gallery app making a reappearance here. That's a shame. That really would have been the icing on the cake. It might still happen, I don't know. Hope it does. But I want to know, does this phone, based on these specs, meet your expectations? If you're a One Mark II owner, will you upgrade? And if you're a One owner, or actually any other Sony device, would you upgrade? If you're not a Sony user, could this get you over onto the Xperia way of doing things? I have to say, I spent my hard-earned money on a One Mark II. A lot of people think,
Oh, well, because, you probably get free phones from Sony and stuff and you just keep them forever.
no, that doesn't happen. I have to buy my own phones. Will I upgrade? Well, I said before, these specs started flying around and the rumours and so on, that I wouldn't because, I'm not Mr. Who's the Boss with millions of dollars coming in every day. But this has got me really tempted. I mean, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, for me, this is at least a 9 in terms of the take my money scale. And that's before I've even had the phone in the studio. I mean, it's looking good. I think I can see myself trading up here. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. As ever, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Let's get some more Trapanese music playing our way out here.